Hydrogen engines are a dead end and have been since physics was invented. Anyone who believes that hydrogen is the fuel of the future and in any way superior to gasoline or especially electric vehicles needs to Google thermodynamics and keep reading until they learn that it's not. Because this myth is a harmful one that's been perpetuated by oil companies and auto manufacturers to just try to slow the adoption of electric vehicles. Let me explain. The way everybody thinks hydrogen is made isn't. At least not 95% of the time. First off, hydrogen is the most abundant element on Earth. It's everywhere. It's in oil, it's in water, it's in your mama, mostly because she's made of water. So if it's all around us and we can use it as a fuel source, and using it as a fuel source doesn't emit anything but water, why wouldn't we use it? And the reason is that hydrogen atoms are a lot like your best friend from high school that time they got in their first relationship. It's really hard to get them separated. You just want to go to the movies with your best friend and suddenly they're showing up with Cheryl and you're suddenly the third wheel. So to pry the hydrogen atoms apart from their puppy lover, it requires energy, and lots of it. Now, how most people think this is done, and it can be done this way, is electrolysis. You take water, you run an electrical current through it, and the hydrogen and the oxygen atoms get a divorce. But we'll get back to electrolysis and telling you why it's stupid in a minute, because 95% of hydrogen isn't produced that way at all. It's produced by a process called steam methane reforming, which is a process where they take methane, or natural gas, which is a fossil fuel that contains hydrogen, and they steam it like your vegetables for dinner. And the process is a tad bit more complicated than that, but that doesn't matter. By going through this process, it breaks down the methane into its chemical components, and they capture the hydrogen, compress it, and store it. But here's the thing, doing that is stupid. See, first you have to get the methane, which usually comes out of oil wells. Then you got to put 3 kilograms of methane into this process to get out 1 kilogram of hydrogen, which is already not a great return on your investment. Then you also got to remember that when you burn gasoline or any other fossil fuel, all of that carbon dioxide that's emitted, that's making it, 50 in February here in Minnesota, that's in the fuel already. It doesn't come out of thin air. So the same thing happens when you put methane through this process. When you're breaking it down, it still releases all of that carbon dioxide into the air. But what's worse is you still need the steam to do this process, which takes energy they usually get from burning fossil fuels, which guess what, releases more carbon dioxide into the air. So in the end, you use about 3 kilograms of methane, release 9 kilograms of CO2 to get 1 kilogram of hydrogen. This whole time, you could have just burned the methane as a fuel source and not gone through all of these extra steps. They do it all the time for grid power generation and fleet vehicles. Now, do you understand why oil companies may have a vested interest in pushing hydrogen as the fuel of the future? We know that that's dumb. Let's talk about electrolysis. Because then you can take electricity from wind or solar, use it to make hydrogen, use the hydrogen as a fuel source, and that is more or less a true zero emissions fuel. It's just a dumb one. First, you need to understand how hydrogen is used as a fuel. It can be used as rocket fuel, but that's not really important here. It can be burned in an internal combustion engine like gasoline or diesel fuel, which is about 20% efficient, which means 20% of the energy in the hydrogen is actually used to move your car. The rest is lost as noise and heat. But there's a better way. The system that basically all commercially available hydrogen vehicles currently utilize, which is a fuel cell, which is just an electric vehicle with electric motors, but instead of having a traditional lithium-ion battery, it has hydrogen, and it does some witchcraft, and it turns that hydrogen into electricity. Doing it this way boosts that energy efficiency up to about 50%, and instead of more lengthy charging times, you can fill your car up with hydrogen in roughly the same time it takes you to fill it up with gasoline. Now we need to talk math, and I'll try to make it as not boring as possible. It takes about 55 kilowatts of electricity to produce 1 kilogram of hydrogen. 1 kilogram of hydrogen contains 40 kilowatts of energy. So now you're looking at around 75% efficiency for your initial energy input. Put that hydrogen in a fuel cell vehicle, and half of its energy is actually used to move the car while the rest is lost. Now, out of the 55 kilowatts of energy you've put in, only about 20 kilowatts have actually been used to move your car down a California highway, because that's the only place I know of that these stupid cars are sold. That's 36% of your original energy investment, and that's not including all of the energy it takes to compress, store, and transport said hydrogen. And then, if for some dumb reason you really wanted to move forward with this whole inefficient process, you'd have to build a whole production and fuel infrastructure that currently doesn't exist. Infrastructure that would take decades and cost on the magnitude of billions, if not trillions, to construct. But now you can take that exact same 55 kilowatts of electricity made with power generation infrastructure that already exists, transmitted through power line infrastructure that already exists, and put that into an electric vehicle, and around 45 kilowatts of that energy will actually be used to move your car down the road, or 80% of your original energy investment versus 35 going the hydrogen route. So yeah, hydrogen is not economically viable, it's not environmentally friendly, it's not the fuel of the future, it's propaganda. Any argument any idiot has against EVs, like when they suddenly pretend to care about the the environment and try to say that electricity is used making fossil fuels, or we don't have the infrastructure, all of those arguments can be applied tenfold against hydrogen. Even as energy storage, because a lot of people argue that if, we build enough renewable infrastructure and we're producing more electricity than we're using, we could use hydrogen to store that energy. You could, but no. Because even in that scenario, there's already way more efficient, practical forms of energy storage. So I'm sorry to break the hearts of all the people who make fuel sources a weird part of their political identity. Hydrogen is stupid, EVs are the future. Sorry, not sorry.